So playing a cruiser on an open map can be very difficult at tier 10. Today we're playing the Hindenburg on Ocean, perhaps one of the more difficult examples for a cruiser. I even have reload mod here. I'm very hopeful that I'll get a brawling match when I'm in my Hindenburg, and we get ourselves Ocean. So what do you do as a cruiser player? Well, to start with, we play the flanks if we can. We're trying to limit the angles of people shooting at us. You're going to notice throughout this video, I'm going to try and limit how I'm showing my broadside to people. I think that's really, really important. Here, of course, we are kind of on the border here, playing very, very passive and making use of our spotter plane. That's going to be a big deal here. The specific build I have gives me more of them that recharge much quicker, but they don't quite last as long. And for maps like this, it's kind of the reason I enjoy that skill. It allows me to have that spotter plane when I need it, and only when I need it, and it doesn't last too long, and it comes back a little bit quicker. It's very nice to have, but playing the flanks here is really, really nice. For example, if somebody was sitting in the B cap area, or just in the enemy spawn towards B, and I'm fighting this curve first at this angle, as an example, well, I'd be showing flat broadside to him. If I'm able to angle my ship where I'm kiting away, then I'm perfectly angled to everyone in the middle of the map, and I'm only showing enough broadside to shoot all of my guns at whatever target is farthest away from that middle clump of enemies. So whoever's going to give me the best chance of staying alive is basically what I'm going to be trying to do. In this case, though, we do want to push a little bit, and of course we're going to try and shoot the DDs, since that's a very, very important ship class to take out early on. I'm playing up in the corner here a little bit by myself. Hindenburg has the sustain to play in some of these situations. I haven't really featured this ship on my channel in a very long time, so I'm glad we're able to cover it today. But we get extra healing, right? We get up to 5 heals potentially if we're taking the right build. The Hindenburg has pretty decent armor, at least against something like the Kurfürst. 30 mil plating is definitely enough to bounce a lot of that. Not quite everywhere, but it is going to allow us to tank some of this GK and hopefully get some really, really good damage in return. My team is kind of clumping up in the middle, so that's another reason I'm wanting to play up north here. I'm trying to provide that little bit of distraction. I know that the enemy team will mostly focus on my team in the middle of the map. We're in fact triple capped at the moment, so we do need to make some sort of play. Torps coming in for us. This is one of the tricky parts of being alone. It's very nice that we have Hydro on our Hindenburg, at least in this game. I couldn't play like this if there was a carrier though, so keep that in mind. This is very specific to a situation where we actually don't have to face a carrier. But now that we see the Torps have come past, those weren't Kleber Torps. And we know then that there have to be at least 2 DDs up north here. That causes us to think we gotta play a little bit more carefully than we are. And if you're pushing a flank like this, you really need to pay attention to where the enemy team is focused at any one given time. To make a flank really worthwhile, you need to draw some attention from the enemy team by doing damage or being a reasonable target to shoot at, and at least not taking a ton of damage back in return. But you also need to know to stop pushing at sometimes, and this was our situation. We finally found the GK again, but he turned back in. He's bow in again, and we don't want to be pushing into a GK like that. So we picked the timing to turn around. You can't always do this, but with battleships with a 30-second reload, that's typically enough time to give you an opportunity to turn away, showing flat broadside while you know the battleship is on reload. This is one of the reasons that Republic is so strong at tier 10. That 20-second reload, well, you can't get a full turnout when you're stuck bow in to being fully kited away in that 20 seconds. That's one of the reasons Republic is so dangerous as a cruiser player. Mostly using Ichi here, but we will swap to the armor piercing here and there. At longer ranges, I really don't trust Hindenburg armor piercing, so I try to go for the fires a little bit more. The Ichi is quite strong, especially against these ships that have 50mm plating, since we have quarter pen, and these are 203s, so we are able to pen just over 50mm. And the Kurfürst has been taken out. At this point, then, a lot of the pressure has been relieved on this flank. They really only have a couple of DDs here, so it's time to turn around and push back in again. Our team has barely controlled the sea cap, but the points are even, because we have managed to take out a few of the enemy ships. So this is kind of the thought process here. I'm always trying to think about, should I be pushing? Should I be holding position? That kind of thing. I'm a little bit scared of torpedoes at the moment. And we see the Shikishima coming, so I don't have to turn around too aggressively yet. especially since we have this spotter plane. Notice how it only lasts a minute, but again, it's available when I want to use it. That's really, really nice here. Already up to 100k, but you'll notice I'm playing relatively passive, I would say, being in almost A10 here. It's typically not the most impactful position, but as a cruiser, you should definitely know that you are a much better ship in the late game than you are in the early game, especially if you got some HP to use. It allows you to push in, be a bit of a bully late game, use your DPM to finish off low target ships. Early game, it's very, very important. You just focus on surviving, in my opinion. Of course, we do have those blowout games. I will say that that can be a little annoying when you focus on surviving those early game kind of scenarios, and then the game is just over very quickly. But in a match like this, where it lasts a long time, we're very thankful to be playing so passive early on and trying to save as much HP as we can. Not getting too aggressive to pick fights. Notice the scores are pretty relatively even here, and that allows us to play a little bit more passive. We do push up behind this smoke screen, trying to take advantage of that. Always trying to go for these DDs. And again, look at the mini-map position. The reason I'm going to push very aggressive here, my team is pretty pushed up towards these caps, and the enemy team seems to be hiding towards the southern side of the map. So I want to take advantage of that. They're probably going to be focused on our Henry, or maybe our Stalingrad, for example. Those two ships are going to be taking most of the damage. So we can use that opportunity to push up without being the primary target of focus. We do need to be very careful though. Again, as soon as they start to switch to us, we have to figure out that right time to either go dark using our concealment, get undetected, or perform a reasonable turn out. I'm not trying to be the #1 focus here, but I'm trying to be that distraction on the flank. I don't want to be clumping up with my teammates all game. I'm wanting to be a little bit of a distraction, trying to provide a bit of a problem that the enemy team is forced to deal with. There's our spotter plane up again so quickly. It does allow us to be a lot more flexible with this reload build. Of course, if I knew I was going to be playing Ocean, more than likely I'd take range mod on my Hindenburg. You shouldn't feel bad if you're taking range mod on your cruisers these days. Maybe some of the light cruisers I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Range mod Worcester comes to mind as being a little bit strange to me, but a lot of these heavy cruisers, especially when you have the shell velocity and the shell pen to do decent damage at range, yeah, honestly, range mod is pretty good these days. Focusing now on the Schlieffen, right? We're trying to focus targets that our team is focusing on. We don't really want to spread out our damage too much. We got to focus down priority targets and take them out. And I turned away, right? I turned away there because I noticed the Schlieffen would have my broadside at the same time as we're pushing into a Shikishima, which is pretty terrifying considering the overmatch there. If he lands his shell, it's going to do a ton of damage. And we just managed to dodge the DD torps again. Again, destroyers are around. We got to be very, very careful of that as well. So our Hydro is about to come back up. Not quite going to use it yet, but it's going to be very valuable for this Henry and I to stay alive if the enemy DDs do decide to torp us here. And now that they're focusing up here, we decide to turn away. It seems a little bit simplistic here, but this really is the thought process that is usually going through my head when it comes to these more open water maps. As soon as I get myself caught too deep and pushed bow in too aggressively, you're just going to die very quickly. That's just kind of how cruisers are, right? They don't survive very long under sustained fire. You have to figure out those engagements that allow you to disengage somewhat freely. And not every game that's going to be easy. Certainly on a lot of maps, you're going to use islands to disengage, right? That makes it a lot easier. You don't have to time that open water suicide turn correctly so that you actually don't die. That's really nice about maps with islands. So try and take advantage of that. Sometimes that can be very, very powerful as a cruiser to just push aggressively and not do the turnout in open water. Get yourself to one of those more checkpoint islands, like I like to call them in my secondary battleship videos. You can think about those islands as well in a cruiser. Use your concealment to get close, try and do some damage as you're getting there, and then use an island cover to turn away, protecting your citadel as your flat broadside. Here I'm hoping to use armor piercing into the side of this Yoshino. Unfortunately, I either aim too high or just get bad dispersion, and yeah, we're just going to get a bunch of overpens. Hindenburg armor piercing does have pretty high alpha, but the shells themselves kind of lack pen, and they're really not great against angled targets at all, so we're we're just going to switch back to the HE very quickly. There's our high caliber. We did get a Witherer earlier on. Getting very nice fire chance here. Of course, with these heavier cruisers, you don't have to take IFHE to actually get the shell pen to deal with a lot of these battleships. I'm bringing that up mostly to talk a little bit about the Yodo. Some of you are probably wondering where the video is on that ship. It's coming. It's coming, trust me. But that ship has been really difficult for me to play. It feels really mediocre, especially when I end up playing a Hindenburg like this. It feels so much more powerful. And they really fit a similar role of that mid to long range HE pressure kind of ship. They don't bring a lot of utility when it comes to radar, so you need to deal that damage. You need to be that distraction on a flank, and Hindenburg is just much better at that than the Yodo. Sure, Yodo has a lot of shells, but they're really floaty, small caliber. You have to take IFHE if you want to pen battleships. Not saying you have to take IFHE on that ship, but if you want to do good damage to a battleship, without relying on the not so great fire chance to start with, it's difficult. It's very difficult. So that's one of the things here about Hindenburg, is you're just a nice jack of all trades kind of cruiser that can excel in these open water games. And of course, we all know Hindenburg is pretty good in a brawl. Those torpedoes, the turtleback really do some nasty stuff if you can get into close range engagements without fighting a ton of battleships. Of course, you don't really want to be doing that. We'd finally taken the focus of this Hindenburg, and we decided to turn out. There's our Confederate, feels pretty nice. And just like before, we're applying just enough pressure to take focus, and then we're turning to kite away, not fully committing to specific engagements. In a one-on-one, of course, it is very advantageous to be the one kiting away. So that's what we're going to try and do. This Hindenburg seems to want to fight us. Notice the points are definitely in the enemy team's favor here, so we do have to deal some damage here. I should be focusing on killing this Hindenburg as quickly as I can. And the enemy team starts capturing C. We could definitely lose this game very, very quickly. Should probably talk quickly about what I would do if I was spawned a little bit differently. What if I spawned middle? Maybe I wouldn't spend a ton of time going up to the flank. More than likely, I wouldn't do that because we probably have a different cruiser that spawned towards the flank and would be taking that position anyway. I would be looking for opportunities to support my DDs in the middle. I think that's probably what didn't happen. Wow, look at that dispersion just for a second. I'm definitely spamming spacebar, that little lock-on trick that I've been using with battleships. Definitely want to use it in cruisers too sometimes. But you do want to look for opportunities to support your DDs as well. So that's going to be trying to stay undetected or reasonably close to your DDs in a bit of a kited position, and then wait for them to spot an enemy DD and then try and focus whoever they end up spotting. That's a decent way to do it. Although you have to be very careful in the middle of these open water maps that you're not giving just flat broadside to the enemy team. It's a great way to die. I try to switch my target here towards the DD, but he realized he's going to go dark there. Holland, of course, has a very short firing range, so I can't even spot him here, even though he's shooting. So I really should just focus on this Hindenburg again. But that's kind of the beauty of World of Warships, in my opinion, is that every game is different. So some of the advice here won't be all that useful in a lot of matches, but I'm trying to keep it general enough that you can use it in some more open water positions, especially if you're finding yourself on a flank where the enemy team isn't sending the majority of their fleet. That's the key here as well. There weren't the majority of the enemy team here. That allowed us to play a little more aggressive and kind of do this hit and run kind of style on the northern end of Ocean here. We get up to 250,000 damage, which is always nice to get that much damage in a cruiser, but especially on an open water map like Ocean. It's a very difficult match to play and took a lot of focus, but it managed to work out, and we did actually win this game, which feels pretty good. No kills, unfortunately, and nearly 3k base. As for the build, there's a lot of different things you can do with Hindenburg, since it is just such a jack-of-all-trades style cruiser here. I've gone with a bit of a damage-focused build. Notice top-grade gunner does help us a lot in those closer range scenarios. But taking concealment, taking superintendent, trying to stay alive, even survivability expert here. This eye in the sky skill is what allows us to have that spotter plane up for shorter durations, but up more often. I find it much more useful. Notice grease the gears. Our turrets were still pretty slow that game. And there are times where I do want to use armor piercing, so I do take gun feeder on this ship as well. As for the equipment here, you can see that reload mod can be a bit of a detriment, although we did manage to farm quite a bit of damage that game, and we managed to just be able to use our spotting aircraft enough. But it was not easy, so taking range mod can be a totally viable strategy here. I just enjoy the range mod a little bit more. Taking propulsion mod, since I'm usually doing a lot of slowing down and speeding up, playing with my acceleration, it's a great way to dodge a lot of incoming fire. Aiming systems, some of the accuracy on Hindenburg isn't amazing, so we definitely want to take that. And the spotting aircraft mod 1, paired with that captain skill, is actually pretty strong. But that's going to be the Hindenburg and open water example. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day.